I wanted to make a video talking about environmental and chemical toxicity, and especially as it relates to the home environment. So I think a lot of us are really educated on air pollution and things of that nature, but when it comes to the home environment, there's actually a lot that we can do to decrease chemical exposure, but you have to know about these things in order to be able to do that. So um, I wanted to talk about specifically the chemicals that you are exposed to within the home. So soaps, shampoos, conditioners, laundry detergents, um, toothpastes, anything that you use on a daily basis. One of the things that I think is really important to keep in mind is that the skin is actually our largest organ. Most people don't know that. The function of the skin is to keep out the environment, but it also absorbs a lot of things. So one of the things that I've become very passionate about is helping people green their homes because it's such a big thing and it's something that people don't even think about. So going back to the skin for a second, when you take a shower, and I assume most of you are taking hot showers, your pores open up. And so whatever you're using on your skin, whether that's soap or it's shampoo you're exposed to, or whatever else, deodorant, putting on a perfume after you leave the shower, all of that stuff absorbs a lot more readily into the skin after the skin has been heated. So just keep that in mind throughout this talk because a lot of these things are used kind of in the bathroom or first thing in the morning, and it makes a big difference. So I'm going to kind of give you the bad news first, and then I'm going to give you solutions because the really good news is that there are quite a few solutions, and it's an empowering thing to know that you can actually protect your health even inside your own home. So the first topic that I actually wanted to start with was tampons. This is a big one. So the average woman throughout her lifetime, assuming that she starts to menstruate and she starts menopause kind of within a healthy range and that she has a regular normal cycle, the average woman in that situation is going to go through about 11,500 tampons in her life. That is a huge number of tampons. And that would be okay if they were safe, but unfortunately they're not. So the FDA categorizes tampons as a medical device, which, I mean, to a certain extent it makes sense because obviously it's not a food or a drug. But because it's not classified as a food or a drug, the same chemical safety guidelines and chemical standards are not applied. And unfortunately what that ends up meaning is that you are ingesting, quite literally, a whole host of chemicals and toxic agents every single month. I think tampons are kind of an interesting topic because, yes, of course, they're not a food or a drug. However, women are applying them internally, right? You're literally inserting it into your body. And the vagina happens to be a warm, moist environment, which anytime there's warmth and moisture, what ends up happening is absorption increases exponentially. So it's sort of, I personally wouldn't classify it as a medical device, but I understand that there's a gray area. So I think we need to be very conscious of these things and recognize what's in tampons and then make decisions for ourselves in terms of how to proceed. So the three main issues that come up with tampons are that they contain something called glyphosate, which glyphosate is a chemical. It's essentially a herbicide, so basically a pesticide. And it's been in the news more recently in terms of gluten intolerance and things like that, so you may have heard about it. But it's basically a pesticide, and I believe it was created by Monsanto. So you kind of get an idea. But anyway, the point is it's a herbicide, and the reason that this is a negative thing for you to have in your body, especially in this context, is that it actually impairs the body's ability to detoxify itself. So that's a real bad thing, right? Your body needs to be able to be exposed to certain things and then get rid of it. but the more exposure to glyphosate you have, the less ability your body has to detoxify itself. The other thing is chlorine. So chlorine is a component that's used to produce tampons. And the issue with chlorine is that it creates something called hydrocarbons. And hydrocarbons, another word for this is dioxins. So the issue with dioxins is that they don't break down and they actually accumulate in the body. So it creates a lot of harm. It's most commonly, oh yeah, this is a crazy fact. So dioxins are most commonly detoxified through the fetal umbilical cord. That fact blew my mind. I was blown away by that. But, so this might actually be something if you're considering having a baby at some point, it might be a really good idea to switch to, move away from tampons for at least, I don't know, I'm very conservative, but I would say at least a year, just to make sure that you're not exposing yourself to this. So anyway, these hydrocarbons are highly toxic. We know that they damage the immune system. They've been linked to cancer. They cause reproductive and developmental issues, and they're most commonly they're associated with endometriosis. So these are things that you don't want. It's if you can avoid it, that's better, I think. The other thing to keep in mind about tampons is that when they're tested independently, usually you can find 9 other known pesticides inside of them. So when you actually break it down, a regular conventional tampon is basically just a pesticide stick that you are inserting into your vagina every month. I don't mean to sound dramatic. I just think we need to be very critical about what we're putting into our bodies because government organizations aren't really being super critical of them, and they have been known to be associated with the things that I mentioned. So that's just one thought. The thing that I recommend to every patient is the Diva Cup. I think it's an awesome awesome company, and I'm so glad that they created it because it's essentially a silicone cup. It's reusable. It's really easy. Everyone that I've spoken to about it who has actually gone and done it has really enjoyed it. And then you don't have to worry about any of this stuff. So I don't know. That helps me sleep a little bit easier at night, that's for sure. Okay, so the next thing that I want to move into is personal care products. So in this category, I include everything from moisturizers to shampoo to conditioner to soap to toothpaste to deodorant to laundry detergents and even sunscreen. And I want you to keep in mind all the things that I'm talking about are sort of the Shoppers Drug Mart brands that you would find. There are natural ones, and I'm going to get into that later, that don't contain these things. But if you are somebody who mostly buys their body care products at a Shoppers or a Rexall or one of these types of stores, just please pay very close attention to these ingredients. And at the end of the video, I would encourage you to check whatever you're using on a daily basis and look at the ingredients list and see if any of these things are contained within. The other thing I wanted to say is that in doing research for this video, I've selected a select few of the chemicals that are found in these body care products that I've mentioned, but please be aware that there are literally dozens more. I've just chosen the ones that appear most frequently across the board. But just because if you turn your product over and you don't see any of these things, I encourage you to still do research. There's a lot of good resources out there. You just Google it. The information is free to the public. And just really start to think about what you're exposing yourself to, because the last thing we need is more chemical exposure. Okay, so the first thing that I will start with is phthalates. So these are essentially plasticizers. They're used to make plastic wrap. So normally plastic wrap wouldn't do that, but it's used to kind of soften plastic and things like that. But one of the biggest issues with phthalates is that it creates or has been known to produce early puberty, especially in females. Obviously, this is not an ideal situation, and it also has been shown to it's been shown to interfere with the reproductive system. So if it's causing early puberty, you can be fairly certain that it's going to cause issues with the reproductive system later on. That's just one thing that phthalates do. The next ingredient is parabens. So when you flip your product over, it's not going to say parabens. It's going to say essentially anything ending in ethyl, methyl, propyl, benzyl, or butyl. So for me, my giveaway when I'm shopping is if it ends in YL, I put it right back on the shelf. I don't need that in my life. Essentially, parabens are preservatives, so they're used to extend the shelf life of whatever the product is. So the issue with parabens is that they easily penetrate the skin. They're known hormone disruptors. They're linked specifically to breast cancer in females, and they're linked to DNA damage. Pretty bad if you ask me. Triclosan is the next one. So this is essentially an antibacterial agent, so basically an antibiotic. It disrupts the thyroid, it damages the hormonal and reproductive system, and we know that it's toxic to the liver. Sodium laureth, or sodium lauryl sulfate. This is a chemical agent that's used to make things foamy. So the reason that your shampoo is foaming nicely is very likely because of this ingredient. So it's linked to cancers in females. It's linked to infertility in both men and women. We know that it's toxic to the organs, especially the liver. It's linked to developmental and reproductive toxicity, as well as neurotoxicity. Fragrance. This is in pretty much everything. So if something smells wintry fresh or like a rainforest or whatever, you can be 100% sure that there's fragrance in it. Sometimes this is called perfume. So just take a look if either of these two terms show up. What you need to know is that fragrance or perfume is a catch-all term for several hidden and undisclosed chemicals that produce scent. So that to me is that tells you everything you need to know. It's undisclosed. That's the important thing. So it can be any combination. It can be, from my research, it didn't say that there's it can be 10 things. No, it can be as many things as you want, any kind of combination of things. And it's scary because you don't even know what's actually in it. But anyway, it's linked to hormone disruption, to neurotoxicity, and we know that it's toxic to the immune system and the reproductive system. You'll notice that there's a theme running throughout all of this. All of these chemicals tend to interfere with hormones, and they're linked to cancer and infertility, which makes perfect sense if you understand how the hormonal system works. The last ingredient I'm going to talk about is propylene glycol. This is found in tons of different things. It also happens to be a component of antifreeze. You did hear that right, it's antifreeze. And it's used in the creation of certain plastics. So it's been listed as a probable carcinogen, not a possible carcinogen, a probable carcinogen. It's been known to damage the liver and the kidney. It's not safe for infants or pregnant women, but you won't find that in the baby books. And it's associated with neurological symptoms. So those are the few chemicals that I wanted to bring to your awareness. I don't want it to sound all bad, because the reality is that yes, chances are you're exposed to these things on a regular basis, but there are so many companies now that are popping up that have picked up on the fact that this stuff is terrible for our health, and they're producing different products. And actually, we're really lucky in Canada because there are so many companies that have popped up locally that are producing wonderful products that don't contain any of these things. So if you're interested in that, if you're serious about wanting to switch some of your body care products out for healthier versions, please get in touch, because I'm happy to email you the stuff that I use in my own home. I think sometimes it makes it easier if you have something to go on. And the other thing I wanted to mention is there are certain companies that don't work with any of these things. They literally are completely natural and healthy for you. But even a lot of natural products will have one or two ingredients. And I just wanted to say that, it's not ideal. Like, I would strongly prefer it if we could all switch to stuff that didn't contain any of these things. I don't know how realistic that is for everybody. But even if you're decreasing it, that goes a really long way. So, whatever you're able to minimize, that's the main thing. So just do what you can because it adds up. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that it's actually really easy to make your own. For years and years and years, I would make my own moisturizers. I'd make my own shampoo and my own toothpaste. They look different and they feel different from what you'll find in a typical product, but you can be 100% sure that they're not damaging your health and in fact are impacting it in a positive way because you're using good herbs, you're using good essential oils. So if anyone's interested in making their own stuff, let me know. I'm happy to send you recipes. I hope this has been helpful and not too much of a downer. I know that this can be a lot of information, but yeah, there's a lot that you can do to make sure that your home environment is a lot less toxic. So let me know if you need any more suggestions. I'm happy to either make another video or just give you individual suggestions. All right, take care.